Hey book nerds, welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing my Halfoweenathon Wrap Up. Still can't say that very well, but the Halfoweenathon was a readathon that ran from the 29th of April to the 5th of May, and it was basically celebrating the halfway point between last Halloween and next Halloween. So the goal was to read kind of horror themed books that fulfilled the challenges. So I'll link my TBR video down below in case you haven't seen it. I'll also link one of the hosts' TBR videos as well, so you can see kind of the challenges and stuff like that. It was a really fun readathon. I actually had a fantastic time. I read 3 books and I had 2 4-star reads and 1 3.5-star read, so really excellent week for me. Yeah, let's just go through what I read. The first book I read was Dreamwoods by Patrick Lacey. Kind of hard to see that cover, I'm not sure how well it will show up. This fulfilled the challenges to read a book released in the last 5 years and to read a book by an indie author. This was one of my 4-star reads. I loved this book. So Dreamwoods is about a guy who one day he's coming home from work and he sees a billboard for this theme park called Dreamwoods, and it is essentially a kind of Disney-esque place. He went there as a child, but it closed down mysteriously, and there's loads of rumours about why it closed down, like there's cults or someone died there or there was torture going on. He sees a billboard saying it's reopened and he decides that he's going to take his family there. His family's kind of going through a tough period. His wife's debating about leaving him and the kids. One of his sons has got diabetes and it's like a life-threatening condition for him. The other son feels super neglected because his brother gets all the attention. So our main character Vincent decides that this is going to be the trip that saves his family. Unfortunately, Dreamwoods has reopened with some ominous goals in mind, and as soon as they get there, weird, creepy horror stuff starts happening. I loved this book. It was a fantastic, typical horror story. It really captured the atmosphere. It was fantastically written, actually. I was surprised by how well written it was. All of the characters were really interesting people. I really believed the relationship between the husband and his wife, and it was kind of complex and there was depth to it. And the horror was great. It was kind of introduced gradually and it was relevant to the characters, which I love. Again, it was just really cohesive narrative, a really strong horror story, and then like the horror built, and even when it built to the point about halfway through where you work out what's going on. It's a horror trope that I don't normally like, but it was so well written and it worked really brilliantly with the setup that I just enjoyed it. I had a blast the whole time. I really recommend this book. I'll definitely be checking out more from the author. And it was just such a fun horror book about a theme park. I really like horror books about theme parks. I've read 2 great ones now and clearly I just need to find more. The next book I read was The Survivor by James Herbert. This fulfilled the challenges to read a book that was turned into a movie. You're also meant to watch the movie, but I didn't actually get around to doing that. And then there was also to read a book by a master of horror. I don't know how well known James Herbert is in America, but he's a massive British horror author in like the 70s and 80s, and he's still pretty well known today. This is about a guy who he's actually one of the pilots of a plane, and this plane crashes horribly and kills everyone on the plane apart from him, and he's the only survivor. And he can't remember anything that happened before the accident, but he's concerned that he is responsible for it. After this crash, in the area surrounding the crash, weird supernatural stuff starts happening. This was a very different book than I was expecting. I thought it was about a guy who like crash lands on an island and he's alone and isolated, and then the ghosts of the survivors are the ghosts of his fellow passengers are tormenting him. So I don't know where I got that from. Maybe that's a different book. Maybe my mum just forgot what the plot actually was, but it was a very different book than what I was expecting. So after I kind of got over that, I did really enjoy it. It's very well written. The horror aspects are mostly well done. They're a little surreal / disjointed with the whole concept of the plane crash, but has a really strong ending. It gets a little bit muddled kind of just before the climax starts. I I did know what was going on, but it was harder to follow than it should have been. And yeah, I do really like James Herbert. It's the second one of his books I've read this year, and I think I'll definitely read more by him. Again, it was a type of horror I'm not a massive fan of. I was hoping for more ghost stuff, and there is ghost stuff, but it kind of goes in a different direction. But yeah, I still really enjoyed this. I'm glad I read it, and it was a short book, which is great for the middle of a readathon. The final book I read was another 4-star read, and that is The Haunted Forest Tour by James A. Moore and Jeff Strand. This was another surprise. This was meant to fulfil the challenges of a book set in the autumn, which it did, and a book not told in the traditional format, which it actually didn't. I thought this book was told in second person because the blurb is told in second person, but it's not, so it's actually just a normal horror book. So I didn't actually do that challenge, but I did all the other ones, so yeah. This is about a incident which happens where a forest spontaneously grows in this area of the world, and this forest is full of monsters. And what happens after this happens is that people start running tours to go ride on a tram through the forest and see all the monsters. And it's Halloween, and one of our many main characters, it's got like an ensemble cast, is going on this trip with his mother for Halloween, and he's always wanted to go on it, and they're going to ride this tram through this forest full of monsters. Only when they do, the tram breaks down, and then horrific things happen. This is a really surprisingly good book. Again, I don't know, I didn't expect much. I think I don't expect much from the Kindle horror books, and I don't know why, because so far most of the ones I've read have been 4-star or higher. But I think it's just because they're not very well known. But I think that tends to be a thing with horror anyway, is that books tend not to be very well known unless they're Stephen King. But yeah, so anyway, this book had really great characters again. I loved all of them. It did a great job of not letting you know when people were going to die. Like, you get loads of focus on a person and then they die, and sometimes you get loads of focus on a person and they don't die. And it made... the deaths weren't shocking, but it made it interesting to read about. There was such creativity in terms of the monsters, the types of monsters that you see in this book, the way people died, the just kind of horror. There was loads of creativity there. I loved it. My only criticism is that it got a bit weird in one of the sections, and it's kind of important to the plot, so I can't really discuss it in a lot of detail. But I wasn't a massive fan of that bit of the book. But then it picks up again towards the end and kind of gets back to the basic forest full of monsters concept, which is great. I understand the book needed more depth, and it couldn't just be a book about monsters eating people. Except sometimes it can just be a book about monsters eating people. I'd be okay with that. But yeah, it was still a great read. If you have Kindle Unlimited, both this and Dreamwoods are on Kindle Unlimited at the time of filming, so I would definitely recommend checking them out if you enjoy horror. If not, I think they're like 99p or £1.99, and for me anyway, they'd definitely be worth that price because I really had a great time. So yeah, that is all of the books I read for Halfoweenathon. Let me know if you took part. Let me know if you think either of these books sounds interesting, or if you've got any other great horror recommendations for me. I love reading horror. Always want to read more horror. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. It helps me out massively. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.